What is up, heroes? This is Midnight Zero, and welcome back to the NCPL. This is going to be week 4, going up against Chaos, or not Chaos, right? Magma, coach of the Chaos Hydreigons. This is the first time I'll be playing this coach, so I'm pretty excited for the battle. I'm not 100% sure what to expect. He's been, as you can see on his Google Doc page here, he's been in a league before the SBN where he got first, which is pretty impressive. I know Sam was in that league, and Sam is the person who beat me the other day, and one of the better battlers, if not second or third, you know, after myself, of course, battler in this league, in my opinion. But that's a whole other story. Right now, I'll be honest, I'm not in the best of places. I'm pretty sick. I have a cough, and my nose is all messed up, and my sleep schedule's really off, and I'm kind of just not on the best place at this moment. Team building for this particular team was relatively frustrating, and I'm kind of just looking to get it done, right? I came up with a team that I think is going to do pretty well. Still requires quite a bit of work to actually put into practice pretty well. But yeah, I just didn't really want to wrestle with the team building process for more than the few hours I already put into it. So that's where we're at today. Like always, I think that if I play well, I can win it out. So regardless, let's get into his team. Looking at his team, first of all, Mega Absol, definitely an offensive threat. Base 150 attack, 115 special attack, hitting a great speed tier at 115. The ability Magic Bounce makes it really difficult to get hazards up on it. You know, it's a great knockoff user, and it gets access to really cool moves like Superpower, Play Rough, Ice Beam, and Fire Blast. So yeah, definitely a mon to watch out for. Kieran Black, his first Z-Mon, is actually an incredible Mon. It's so good. Base 170 attack, 120 special attack, able to drop Dracos, fire off Ice Beams, Earth Powers, Fusion Bolts, Outrage, Dragon Claw, you know, you name it. It's Kieran Black is really good. It's also really bulky. Base 125 HP, 100 defense, and 90 SPDF. The only things crippling it are weakness to rocks and a base 95 speed, in my opinion. It oftentimes runs a mixed life orb set. It's also a great scarf user. It's a great band user, great specs user. Leftovers with sub and roost. It's a really great mon all around, and definitely one of the scariest mons to have to prep for it like ever. But next up is Tapu Fini, which is just a bulky mon I've used in the past. I liked using it. It wasn't my absolute favorite, but this thing, it's just really tough to take down, especially because of Misty Terrain making it difficult to status. It's got a great speed tier, meaning that even for a bulky Pokemon, it's able to outspeed and taunt other users. It can Calm Mind, Hydro Pump, Moonblast, it can Scald itself if it wants to, and it's a great defog user. That's, I think, its main utility on his team. Next up is Ferrothorn, another really great bulky mon that is just super difficult to take down. It can set up hazards, you know, rocks, spikes, it can T-Wave things, toxic things, Gyro Ball, Power Whip, Leech Seed. It's a monster to deal with. It's such a pain. It's got great physical and special bulk, and decent attack even at that, so definitely a pain. Next up is Necrozma, one of the Pokemon I have a little less experience actually going up against. I think its versatility is pretty scary. It can be a reliable rocker, bulkier set. It can run, you know, Calm Mind, Iron Defense, Stored Power. It can run Rock Polish Weakness Policy thanks to Prism Armor, and it has a decent move pool. So yeah, it's one of those mons that when I see it, I'm like, okay, I have to play really carefully around you because I'm not exactly sure what you're going to be doing. Alolan Marowak, really strong. Now, you might not be thinking so looking at its base 80 attack, but when you have Stab Flare Blitz coming off of, you know, Adamant, Max Attack, Thick Club boosted Marowak, then we're talking. Shadow Bone also puts in a lot of work. Bone Meringue is very strong as well. It can also run Flame Charge if it wants to boost that, you know, really meager base 45 speed. It can also run, you know, some bulkier sets. Maybe you know, invest a lot in HP and SPDF. It's got natural, you know, base 110 defense to work with. It could also be a electric type move immunity via Lightning Rod. So it's got versatility. I'm most concerned about physically offensive. Next up is Klefki, which is just another pain to deal with. He's got a lot of mons that are just really difficult to take down and a pain. Klefki can get up screens, it can set up hazard spikes, it can T-Wave things, it can Magnetize to eliminate its ground weakness. It's overall just a hassle of a Pokemon to deal with. Jolteon is a really difficult mon to deal with as well, because of its base 130 speed. I was really surprised at how fast, just how fast Jolteon actually is. And with a base 110 special attack, it can actually hit decently hard. It's a great momentum getter with Volt Switch. It has access to Shadow Ball, Signal Beam, and of course Hidden Power. It can also be used for Baton Pass, as some of you might recall Max used it in NCPL Season 3. And yeah, that speed tier is really where Jolteon becomes useful, especially because you can afford to run specs on it, right? But moving on to Gligar, a mon that I have personal experience with and actually really enjoyed using. It's got great natural bulk, especially when you slap an Eviolite on it, access to reliable recovery and roost, hazard removal and defog, hazard setting and stealth rock. It has immunity, so it can't be toxic if he wants to run that, of course, which he can now, with defog, which wasn't available prior to Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon. And yeah, U-turn for momentum, potential SD passing, Earthquake, you name it. It's one of those really versatile defensive Pokemon. But Delmise, this is a mon I really haven't dealt with a lot. It's got a base 131 attack and basically 3 stabs thanks to its ability Steelworker, Grass Ghost, and Steel type attacks. It can trap mons with Anchor Shot. I think Anchor Shot is what it's called, and it also gets access to stab Power Whip, so definitely threatening on that end. It is really slow though. It doesn't have incredible special bulk, but it's still like a heavy hitter. It's also a rapid spinner and a spin blocker, which is pretty neat utility. Komala's not that great in my opinion. It can be very specially bulky if you want it to be. It can be a Wish Passer. It can run Banded Last Resort, which is pretty interesting, but I don't know. I don't think it's anything to write home about. And then there's Scolipede. Scolipede, also not as important in this league as it would be normally because speed passing is banned. So it has speed boost. It can, boost of course with SD. It has Aqua Tail, Earthquake, Mega Horn, Poison Jab. So it can be an offensive threat in and of itself, but it doesn't have the best coverage. So it's most useful as a lead where you can, have one attack, do some damage, set up spikes, whether you want T-spikes or regular spikes, and potentially even Endeavor at the end. So that's Scolopede's main deal. Then there's Arcanine, which is actually one of the fire types I most like using, despite having very little experience actually using it. It's got a decent special attack and attack stat, making it a mixed threat, whether that's Flamethrower, Fire Blast, Flare Blitz, all of the above. It can, run bulkier sets with Morning Sun, Snarl, Will-O-Wisp, that sort of thing. And on the more offensive sets, if you want to go physical, you can run stuff like Wild Charge to hit water types. You can run Extreme Speed for really great priority as well. So definitely a good mon. Its abilities Flash Fire and Intimidate are also really helpful for it, making it potentially a fire type immunity or a physical attacking check. So yeah, it's a good mon. Lastly then is Machamp, his second Z-mon, which Machamp can be really annoying depending on what set it runs. What's really popular right now is Guts Flame Orb Machamp, where that base 130 attack, close combats coming off of base 130, stab, Guts boosted, are hitting really, really hard. It can also run Knockoff, it can also run Facade, Earthquake, Thunder Punch, Bullet Punch. It's got a lot of different attacks, great coverage, and that's why it's also a great Z-mon, so definitely a threat to look at. So now, let's see, what am I going to do to try and counter that? I am going to be bringing, first of all, Toxapex, which I have now named Nomu. If you guys have seen Boku no Hero Academia, you guys will get the reference, as you probably would with almost all of my Pokemon. But getting into the specifics of this mon, I wanted a defensive core, and looking at his team, Toxapex really helps out. I think something I got over last week that was really helpful was knowing that my opponent's team had mons that could hit it really hard, even super effectively, but still bringing it anyways and finding a lot of utility outside of those fewer situations. So, looking at his team, I can potentially be going up against a Jolteon, right? I could potentially be getting hit by a Necrozma. I could be taking Fusion Bolts from Kyurem Black. I could be getting knocked off from Mega Absol, but it finds so much utility out of that, whether that's going up against Tapu Fini, potentially even Kyurem Black if he might not be running Fusion Bolt. He might be running Earth Power instead. It could also be Mega Absol if I'm okay with getting my Black Sludge knocked off. It could be Ferrothorn if I need to stall that out. He might not be running Psychic on Necrozma. It's really helpful for Alolan Marowak. It's really helpful for Klefki. I even take Life Orb Thunderbolt from Jolteon at full. I'm really good, it's really good against Delmise, Komala, Arcanine, even Machamp, depending on whether it has Earthquake or Thunder Punch. And of course, I have other Pokemon for a reason, right? There shouldn't be one Pokemon that takes on everything my opponent has. So it's really helpful for certain mons, and it can act as a really nice pivot. It's able to tank at least one hit from most things, 70% or so, and then gain a lot of that back with Regenerator. So it's a really nice pivot, and it can scald things, get a little bit of chip damage, get burns potentially, but more importantly, it can get toxic on things, put things on timers, and set up toxic spikes so that I don't have to, have that pressure on Toxapex throughout the game to try and put things on timers. If T-spikes are up, I force him to potentially defog with Tapu Fini, and more importantly, when Tapu Fini comes in, it will get poisoned itself, so that's not something he can really deal with that well. Recover for obvious reasons. Taking a quick look at a couple notes I've got, you can see these notes right here, they're kind of scattered and everything, but regarding the defense, 204 defense puts me at a 1% chance to be 2-hit KO'd by Guts Machamp's Facade. That's max attack Adamant, by the way. I have a solid chance at living close combat into Earthquake from Adamant max attack Guts Machamp. And I'm not 2-hit KO'd by Adamant Marowak's Shadowbone. So yeah, the 36 Spadef is just optimizing. I don't really need all of the defense to get meaningful calcs, so I figured I would help out with potential Earth powers from Kyurem. And yeah, the rest I went just backed up into defensing just for reliability because it never really had any use outside of that. So yeah, that's why PEX is coming around this time. The next mon we're bringing is Typhlosion, Bakugo, and yeah, we are just running a max special attack Timid Specs Typhlosion. It's really there to just nuke things. It's pretty straightforward. You come in, you click Eruption. If you're not at full health, or rather if you're below 75% health, you click Fire Blast. Maybe if I need to make a read on Tapu Fini, I can go for Hidden Power Grass. And in the really odd chance I don't want to be choiced, and I have the opportunity, I can go for Fling to get rid of my specs. That's really all there is to this set. I'm outspeeding Kyurem Black, which is the only thing, which is the closest thing to base 100 speed he has, and the rest went into defense in anticipation of potential Sucker Punch from, I don't know, Mega Absol if he thinks I'm Scarf, or something like that. So yeah, it's really straightforward. Just looking at his team, I wanted a really hard-hitting fire type to hit Ferrothorn, and really something to just nuke a lot of his mons. I can bring Typhlosion in because of its speed tier on a couple things, right? And I outspeed and threaten him out with Eruption, whether that's Necrozma, Ferrothorn, Kyurem Black if it's not Scarfed, Klefki, even Gligar doesn't take it well, Delmise, Scolipede, Machamp, Komala, like all of these mons do not take Specs Eruption well at all. So I can bring it in and scare something out and 2-hit KO most things on his team. I think Tapu Fini takes like 35-40% from it, so after just a little bit of chip, I can actually 2-hit KO it with a Specs Eruption. And late game, it could be Fire Blast as well. Basically just punching holes in the opposing team and forcing switches, which will be important if hazards are up, especially if T-spikes are up. So, yep, that's the rationale there. And the next mon, I wanted to complement Toxapex. And looking at what Toxapex is weak to, what it couldn't really cover for, what made sense to me was a Mega Scizor that was physically defensive. It's a very typical set. It should look really familiar. Bullet Punch, U-Turn, SD, and Roost. Really considering Defog, but I just didn't want to have to worry about it. He's got a couple hazard control mons himself, and I'm just going to put a lot of pressure on him to get rid of hazards if I'm struggling with them myself. And yeah, it's physically defensive. It's there to take all the physical hits Kyurem Black can go for. The only thing it really doesn't deal with well is Hidden Power Fire Kyurem Black, which he may or may not be running. He's got a lot of 4 move slot syndrome with Kyurem Black, whether it's between Ice Beam, Dragon Claw / Outrage, Fusion Bolt, Earth Power, Hidden Power Fire, Substitute, Roost. all of those moves have a lot of merit in this matchup, so you might not be running Hidden Power Fire. I'm also really good against potential Tapu Fini, unless it's running Hidden Power Fire. I'm good against a Ferrothorn. I'm good against Necrozma, unless it's running Hidden Power Fire. Noticing a theme. I can set up against Klefki. I can set up against Ferrothorn. I can set up against Tapu Fini. Depending on what his Kieran Black is, I can set up against that. Depending on whether or not his Jolteon has Hidden Power Fire or not, I can set up on that. I can set up on Gligar. I can set up on Delmise. I can set up on Komala. I can set up on Scolipede. And I can even set up on Machamp if I'm at high enough HP. So the idea here is I'm able to tank a lot of hits from all of his physical attackers and some of his special attackers, especially if they don't have Hidden Power Fire. And I'm able to roost up if I need to keep it around to check those mons later on in the game, or if I see potential for a sweep, I can SD. And if I don't, and I just want to get momentum, I can U-turn. So that's kind of the mentality here. It really complements Toxapex well, in my opinion, especially with the potential earthquakes from Machamp, or the thunder punches from Machamp, or the what's it called? Earth powers, and then of course Toxapex covers up and really helps out with scouting for Hidden Power Fires. So the next mon is going to be Shaman. Shaman making her debut. It's an interesting set. It's speedy and very specially offensive, but what I really liked about Shaman is that it also has a lot of natural bulk. I can rely on it to actually take some hits, and with this particular set, I'm running Leftovers, and I have Leech Seed as well. So I do plan on, bringing this in, taking a hit, potentially seeding up on something, getting a little bit more passive damage, healing myself back up, while also being really threatening. I can always go for Seed Flare and do a ton of damage to something, and have a really good chance. I think what's the percentage again? 40% chance to lower the target's SPDF by 2. Making it that much weaker to more Seed Flare spam, or one of my 2 coverage moves, whether that's Earth Power or Hidden Power Fire, which have great coverage against his team, really only missing out on something like Kieran Black, which after Rocks dies to a Seed Flare into, -2 Seed Flare if his SPDF is, dropped. So yeah, just looking at his team, again, this base 100 speed tier is really nice against him. That's why I've got Typhlosion to hit things. I can bring it in, I know I outspeed, and I can, get 2 hits off before potentially dying or something like that. Same goes for Shaman. He's going to be hard-pressed to switch around, and pretty much anytime Shaman is in, he's going to have to sack something to go into a faster threat like a Scarf Kyurem or a Mega Absol, which doesn't even Oko me, and I Oko it back with the Seed Flare. Same with Jolteon. The little bit of HP investment I do have is so that I live to Life Orb, Hidden Power Ices from timid Jolteon, and I do a lot back with Earth Power and Seed Flare. So yeah, Shaman hopefully can put in some work this week. Next up is Greninja. We're bringing more and more offense. I really wanted to hit a speed tier above Absol. I wanted to have a mon that was just naturally faster than Absol around, so that I could, hit it hard. Surf Okos it. Straight up Okos it. And looking at his team, like Surf, Dark Pulse, and Hidden Power Fire. The only thing that's not really hitting hard is Tapu Fini, right? Surf is doing a lot to anything that it hits neutrally. Dark Pulse hits a lot of things super effectively, and Hidden Power Fire hits stuff like Ferrothorn and Klefki, which I think actually takes more from Surf. I think so. So yeah, that's more so the rationale with Greninja is, it's Life Orb, it can hit hard, it threatens out Mega Absol in particular. I don't take that much from Sucker Punch, and it brings in Tapu Fini. It gives me opportunities to double into something like Shaman and basically pick up a knockout every time I'm able to do so. I also can set up spikes with Greninja. I do force out a lot of switches, no Alolan Marowak is going to want to stay in on my Greninja, and as long as Tapu Fini's around, what I can do is set up a spike and then force him to potentially defog as I go into my Shaman a little bit more safely, rather than have to try and risk pulling a double when, if he stays in, my Shaman just drops, right? So yeah, I force some switches, and I can potentially get up spikes early on, which will pressure a lot of his mons later on. Next up is going to be Scarf Chomp. Scarf Chomp is so reliable. I love having a Scarf Chomp in the back. It's very straightforward. Earthquake, Outrage, Dragon Claw. It hits everything I need it to hit really hard. It's 2-hit KOing a lot of mons after spikes and rocks, or after just a little bit of chip damage. So It's one of those mons that I bring in, and if I get momentum with it, I'm probably doing a lot of damage to something. And I can also get up rocks with it. It's not ideal. It was really difficult to fit rocks on this team, in my opinion, and this is kind of where they ended up. I'd like to, very early on in the game, force a switch where I can get up rocks, and, you know, then hopefully pressure, tap a Finny from there, pull a double into Shaman on the Finny to, you know, keep him from getting the defog, as rocks are really important for something like Huron Black to get whittled away. But what else is there to talk about with Chomp? I really wanted something to outspeed Jolteon. That was very important. I definitely wanted to outspeed Jolteon and have the ability to revenge that, because Bullet Punch isn't doing too much, Water Shuriken wasn't doing too much, and I didn't want to run Scarf Typhlosion because it just wasn't as strong as I wanted to. And look at how grounded his team is. His team is so grounded, and what isn't grounded, or what takes, you know, Garchomp's attacks really well, I can safely switch into something like Shaman and just start firing off Seed Flares. So that's the idea here. I considered running something like Fire Blast for Klefki because it can, of course, go for Magnet Rise, but if, you know, he brings in Klefki and is like very obviously considering going something like Magnet Rise, I can just pull a double into Typhlosion. So that's the team. It's a lot more offensive than I anticipated, but the idea is my speed tiers work out really nicely, and I can break through his walls pretty well, in my opinion. So I need to play a little bit more aggressively to keep up momentum, because each time I get momentum, I pretty much pick up a kill, as long as hazards are up. So game plan is get up hazards ASAP, and then gain momentum. And when I need to scout, when I need to pivot, etc., pretty much use Toxapex and Scizor to my advantage. So regardless, good luck to Magma, and I hope you guys are looking forward to the battle when that does come around. But until then, this is Midnight Zero, and this mission is complete.